not to interrupt the conversation, we will definitely continue this conversation, but I would like to start our meeting this morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Rotary Club of St. Albert morning Zoom meeting number 1504, May 7th, 2021. I'm your host president, Mark Dixon, and I recognize our executive members present, board members present, fellow Rotarians, guests, and any pets who may be wandering through the screen. Now, before we start this meeting, I'd like to take a few moments regarding the fire at Citadel Mews Seniors Complex yesterday evening. We've all been talking about that. Alberta Health Services tweeted that 3 patients were transported to hospital. 2 patients suffered from smoke inhalation and were transported in serious but stable condition, while a third suffered from a minor cut. No fatalities and heroic stories of carrying residents down stairwells in their wheelchairs. The Citadel Village, just in case you don't know, consists of 95 independent and supportive living units in Citadel Mews West, where the fire was, 81 independent living units in Citadel Mews East, and 125 long-term care beds in the Citadel Care Center, according to the company's website. Many of these folks, as you know, have lost their home. Our thoughts and prayers go out to the residents, families, and staff of Citadel Mews. Our thanks to the amazing first responders who dealt with the blaze and healthcare workers who supported those who were at the building. And to our amazing community that quickly came together to support fellow St. Albertans in need. I've asked Doug Campbell, as Director of Community Service, to be our point person to see if there's something that we can do as a club to provide support. If you have suggestions, please send them to Doug. And I see from the note from Kathy that came out, or from the city that came out, that the majority of the needs are taken care of, but I'm sure that will evolve going forward. And I'm so pleased that we have this opportunity as Rotarians to come together as a community and support one another. So as we sing "O Canada," please stand and keep the residents, families, and staff of the Citadel Mews in your minds. Thank you very much. Our land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on Treaty 6 territory, traditional lands of First Nations and Métis peoples. As treaty people, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, we share the responsibility for stewardship of this beautiful land. Our inspirational moment, Mr. Campbell, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mark. I looked for 2 quotes today to bring to light 2 issues. One is the leadership within our Rotary Club and the leadership that we have around the world, and came up with 2 quotes. One is, Rotary is a safe place for leaders. Like-minded people come together in common purpose to make people and community better across the street, across the city, across the nation, and around the world. And this one caught me because it never dawned on me, and the quote goes, "The sun never sets on the world of Rotary." That is why Rotary makes a world of difference. Thank you, Mark.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Doug. Introduction of guests. Daria, would you mind, please?
Sure, we have our guest speaker here with us this morning. I will provide a bit more intro later. Mr. John Liston.
Wonderful. Welcome, John.
Thank you.
Do we have any other guests? No, nobody that I see. Michael has joined us, so good to see you, Michael. And Natalia is still having Zoom challenges. So I'm not sure if she's reached out to somebody to do FaceTime, connecting to Zoom.
Hey Mark, I just messaged you. I have Natalia on FaceTime. I'm just finishing getting ready, so I'll have camera on in a sec.
Thank you very much, Laura. So we're all good. So that means that we get to do the welcome song.
Really?
Really?
Welcome to Rotary. Glad you are here. Come shake our hands and share a friendly cheer. Whether from near or whether from far, we're glad you're here. We hope that you will like our little song because we're proud of St. Albert, and you'll agree. Our club enjoys some great camaraderie, so we do what we can to help our community with our friends at Rotary. With our friends at Rotary.
Excellent.
That's overstating it a bit, but
Well, I'm just sitting here looking at the painful look on Ken McCrae's face, so that's worth it all. So without further ado, as they say, our guest speaker, Daria, if you wouldn't mind doing the introductions.
Sure, I just want to check if James is online. Doesn't look like it. Okay, here we go. So John is the Vice President of Alberta Enterprise Group. Alberta Enterprise Group is a voluntary member organization made up of business owners and senior executives from across the province who believe in free enterprise and advocate for businesses in Alberta. John has been a resident of St. Albert for 26 years, having grown up in Edmonton and then lived in 3 different provinces and worked in all 10. John is married to Allison for 36 years and has 2 grown children, Liam and Zoe. He is very active member of both our business community and the charitable sector, as we saw just last week. Among his many community service activities, he leads a group called T8 and 100 Men Who Care, who have raised just over $400,000 for our community, co-chairs the Mark Spector Golf Classic in support of Sports Central charity, and you may have seen him receive the Paul Harris Fellowship from our club last week. John would like to share his thoughts on advocating for Alberta's future. Welcome, John, and I'll pass it over to you now.
And James is here, Daria.
Okay, well, hello, James.
Sorry.
You'll get fined later, but that's okay.
I know.
Well, I forgot about fines. Can you see that screen, everybody? I hope.
We can see that, yes, thank you.
And you can hear me, obviously.
Very clearly.
So how about that picture of Edmonton? What, isn't that just spectacular? I want to share a little bit of. I've been spending so much time with Alberta businesses through this pandemic, and really for the last 4 or 5 years. And I think the first thing is I want people to understand that business people aren't these ogres that are sitting with their feet up on their desks, smoking a cigar and taking in money. There are people like you guys. They're Rotarians. They're community leaders that raise money for the communities. You know, when we're selling a table at an event, it's typically the business people who are stepping up and supporting them all. So first thing is, I want to thank all of you for the work that you do. Rotary is just an extraordinary group, and so, you know, for me to come in and tell you about community service and about service above self is quite funny, because you do it much better than I do. But thank you for all the work that you do. And this club is one of the extraordinary Rotary clubs. I'm well aware of that, and I'm lucky enough to know many of you through it. So I got this thing called the Paul Harris Fellow, which is quite an odd thing. I get a call from James, and he says, "John, we want to give you this award." And you never really it's uncomfortable, because you don't do the service work, and you all know this, to get acknowledged. You do it because there's a need. And so it's humbling and a bit odd to receive this thing, but it's an incredible, it's an incredibly powerful piece. You know, you read more and more about Paul Harris and the history. So thank you for it. My only piece of advice is that if we can somehow lobby to change that thing to a couples award, because my wife does all the work and I take all the credit for it. And you know, we were in James's garage. Well, guess who did all the work? It was Denise. When Robert is involved in things, it's Marla. When Sandra is doing all of her work, well, guess what Roy's doing? So at times these things should be more of a couples award or a team award more than an individual award. And I just want to acknowledge my wife and the great work that she does in the community. She's much more quiet about it. I tell everybody what I do. She just goes and does it. But thank you for that award. It's you know, I'm honored by it. I live about 2 blocks from this little building. And one of the owners of the building, or the owner of the place, is Greg Christensen. Greg's one of our members of Alberta Enterprise Group. And I couldn't get a hold of Greg last night because he was at the St. Albert Inn with all of the seniors, getting them into rooms and trying to deal with the emergency plan that they had in place. You know, you can imagine these places have to have very significant plans. But we were literally out on our deck looking at looking at the flames and the smoke. It was extraordinary. And I went there this morning. I was at the site at 6 this morning. Here's just a little bit more. The firefighters have been going all night. There's a bus there for them to go in and kind of rest and stay warm. There's some Tim Hortons coffees and donuts for them. And they are still on site. It's an extraordinarily eerie sight this morning. And I'm devastated. My mother died this year. She was 95, and she died in a seniors home out in BC. But what we've put these seniors through with COVID and the lockdowns and the inability for us to visit them and all that, and then for them to come through this thing, man, talk about being tested. And these are our builders. These are the people who built the province that we're lucky enough to enjoy right now. So I'm quite emotional about this thing, and we're going to find ways to do whatever we can to help. Luckily, you know, Greg Christensen, they do have some room in some of their other facilities. I haven't talked to him at all because, again, he's been going all night with the work they're doing. But please keep them in your prayers. It's just unbelievable what happened last night. So let me tell you a little bit about Alberta Enterprise Group. And I want to talk to you today just about why I think Alberta is poised for the best Alberta we've ever seen. I've had enough of the victim, poor us, the world's being mean to us. I want to talk about why Alberta rocks. And so this group that I'm involved with is called Alberta Enterprise Group. It's a bunch of business owners who started in 2007. Cal Nickel was the fellow who started it. It had many extraordinary Edmonton and area leaders in it. And its real focus is advocating for business, progress for Alberta's business, and this concept called free enterprise. Things like profit is actually a good word. Somewhere in the world, we've seen people turn the word profit into greed. Well, profit's what allows businesses to grow and hire people, and those people pay taxes, and those taxes pay for hospitals and seniors' homes. Competition, we believe that the marketplace should probably be the place where a lot of the decisions are made. So we'd like to see, a lot less government and a lot more decision making out in the marketplace. But those are some of the kind of the fundamental underpinnings, and I share that with you just because you'll hear that tone in some of my comments. I've had enough of EORs. That we are living in a world right now where everyone's saying, yeah, it's sunny, but it's gonna rain. The combination of the virus, the economy prior to the virus, a variety of things have tested Albertans, and I think we have to make a shift to optimism and hope as opposed to being victims, and that's my goal. I think I'll try to fix the world myself. I was going to talk a little bit about, I was going to take you through a test, but I want to tell you about a book called Factfulness. Hans Rosling wrote a book, and it's an excellent book talking a little bit about how we have to get away from the social media and all the noise that's out there and really one of the biggest challenges we have is trying to find truth. And so what he talks about in his book is there's kind of the key takeaways. Don't fall into the misconception that the world is worse off. The world has advanced incredibly. And so we need to be, we need to be celebrating what we've accomplished, not coming up with all the reasons why the world's going to hell in a handbasket. The negativity instinct can drive other misconceptions. When we get caught in the negative mode, we get caught in misconceptions. And then that straight line instinct, we tend to take that and project it out and cause a lot of problems. Then the other 3 points were contextualize new information you acquire, see the world accurately and consider multiple perspectives, and then stick to the facts and don't exaggerate. And they sound like normal things, but between media and social media, we are having trouble culling through that material to get to the truth. So I want to talk to you a little bit about what's actually going on in Alberta and why it's poised. When I started talking to Daria about me speaking, I was the president of Alberta Enterprise Group, but 2 weeks ago we coerced Danielle Smith to come and join us. And Danielle and I she's in Calgary, I'm in Edmonton, we're running the organization together. We've made her the president. So I've now become the vice president. And Danielle just wrote this piece about, despite the gloom, boom times are just around the corner. We really think that. This Advantage Alberta is a series of panels, and she was moderating them. And on those panels, we had Albertans who were talking about what's going well. Sorry, I just got to move my images here. Jack Mintz, hopefully you've heard of him. Jack is at the University of Calgary, a very, very highly regarded public policy, received the Order of Canada, and a brilliant man on the economic side. And he talked about the 3 major strengths of Alberta are our resource economy. We always talk about all these, collective resources, whether it's forestry or the lithium that we're finding now, and many of the rare earth minerals that are in the tailings ponds up in Fort McMurray. We've got a discovery happening in there that's fascinating. There's the entrepreneurial culture that we have, and we'll talk a bit about that. And then he said there's this thing called the volatile economy. And I'm going to talk about all 3 of those pieces, but very interesting. He's just very bullish on Alberta. Then there's, on that same panel was Dave Filipchuk, who's the CEO and president of PCL. And he was the same. He said, I've worked all over North America, I've come back home, which is Edmonton. And he said, we just have this resource-rich environment. We have a business-friendly environment. The quality of life in Alberta is beyond compare. And we have this thing called the ownership mindset, he called it, and this helper mentality. And exactly what Mark Dixon started with is the first thing we do when we see that fire at the Muse is, okay, how can we help? And not every place has that. As odd as it seems normal to a Rotarian to think that way. It's not normal in the world. So What is this? What is this volatile economy that that Mintz speaks to? What is this ownership mentality that Philip Chuck speaks to? There's another fellow. He's the president of Finning Canada. Came over here 2 years ago from England. He was running Finning in England. Kevin Parks is his name. He is English by origin. And he said to me, John, there's 250 jobs in this industry that are like mine across the world, and I wouldn't trade for one of them. He said, none of them have the treasures Alberta has, the people, the resources, the ingenuity, the quality of life, the opportunities you can forge for you and your family. And he says, sometimes I wonder if Albertans know it. He's from the outside. He came here 2 years ago. He has fallen absolutely in love with this thing called Alberta. And so, you know, part of my goal, we want to be able to sell Alberta to the world. But if we're at home feeling very Eeyore-ish, then it's very hard to sell the world when our own people aren't buying it. And so that's, again, kind of the role of Alberta Enterprise Group and mine, is I want to really kind of drive home to Albertans how good we have it. And if you have a chance, if you have a pen, just jot down the website, investalberta.ca. And this is a website that the Alberta government has charged David Knight-Legg with going out to the world and bringing investment back to Alberta. They've done an outstanding job of explaining the value of Alberta. But let me tell you a little bit about the history of that ownership and that culture. There's this guy named Father Lacombe. They walked out from Montreal to St. Albert. It wasn't called St. Albert at the time. And the best part is when they got here, he turned around to one of the guys who had walked with him and said, "Go back and get the nuns." Imagine that. We just got from Montreal to St. Albert, and he says, "Go back and get, you know, Sister Margaret Duville and her team and bring them out." It's like, but we just got here. So they walk all the way back. They come out and they set up this place called St. Albert. And you want to talk about resilience, right? Between what it must have taken to establish themselves on that hill. And Sister Margaret Duville, if you read her history, it's just one of the most tenacious, tough ladies that you've ever met. She took business people on and raised money and did everything she could. Her passion was for mothers and children. And it's an extraordinary story. So we have this culture in St. Albert where you know, we have trouble walking down to the grocery store. These guys walked from Montreal to St. Albert. These fellows were going up the Athabasca River in canoes, and they saw this black stuff oozing out of the sides of the banks of the river. And it's funny because we now get condemned for being miners of this stuff called bitumen. But the fact is, the earth took this bitumen and was pushing it up through its layers up and oozing it out onto the banks of this river. And somehow or another, we had the ingenuity to take that particular material, this bitumen, and figure out how to separate the bitumen from the sand and turn it into a fuel that has fueled the industrial development of the world since we found it. And it's that kind of extraordinary ingenuity that's made Alberta what it is. And I think sometimes we've forgotten it. And again, I love the term salt of the earth. Alberta was built on first generation Ukrainians and Polish people coming out and being given land in the middle of this godforsaken place and saying, here's some land, if you can break it and farm it, you can have it. And we've always had this ability to kind of to survive in a tough condition and find ways to find success. And there's no reason why that isn't setting the stage for us right now. So I have incredible respect for the history and the danger of cultures. We lived in Ontario. I've worked in all 10 provinces, and one of the dangers you have is as you move generationally away from the land, you stop being salt of the earth. You start to lose your grounding. And I'm a big believer. One of the things that Alberta has going for it is this grounding. And then back to the volatility piece that Dr. Mintz was speaking about. He said this boom bust cycle of Alberta has trained us to always be looking from kind of the bottom of the cycle and knowing that we can find a way out. So it's kind of, if you've read the book Good to Great, it's kind of the Stockdale paradox, where we're not in a great place, but we know we're going to be. And he said that volatility has given us this survival instinct and this ability to kind of turn the corner and make it happen again. Whereas if you take someplace, and no disrespect, I lived in Manitoba, but they've had a very stable and level kind of economy. And as a result, they haven't experienced that boom bust that we have. And that boom bust is a training for being tough. And so we as Albertans are much grittier, tougher. We live in a tough climate, and we know how to make it work. And so here we sit. We're 2021. We've got a virus, the oil price. Everybody hates fossil fuel. Everybody uses it, but everybody hates it. And so, you know, how do we get moving on this thing? And again, I got to watch my time here, Daria. You make sure you throw me under the bus when you're ready. Our our distribution of our gross domestic product in Alberta is surprisingly diversified. You know, the mining, oil and gas isn't 100% as many people in the rest of the country seem to think. We have extraordinary things going on in so many different areas. And so we're much more diversified, I think, than people will probably understand unless they look at the numbers. You know, if you take a look at Ontario, for instance, they've, you know, their mining is way down at the bottom. They just don't happen to have the resources that we have, other than they have some beautiful lakes. But they've got, you know, manufacturing and a lot of the real estate and leasing parts are driving their GDP. And so, you know, we all have different economies. What makes Canada great is this diversification. And we can get into all sorts of discussions about, are we sharing it fairly? But the fact is, Alberta is quite well diversified, and we continue to diversify much further than we've been. The tech business right now is unbelievable what's going on between technology and all of the other kind of foundational industries like ag. So ag tech is extraordinary right now. Alberta is really on the forefront of many of these things. There's a group called Bio Alberta, and that's about 200 companies that focus on the biopharmaceuticals, medical devices. Just so you know, 73% of medical devices are made from plastics that are made from fossil fuel. So if somebody turns off the tap on fossil fuel, you may as well close our hospitals. Environmental biotech and related areas. So there's lots going on in the biotech industry. There's a group called Alberta Machine Intelligence Institute. Ralph Klein in the early 2000s put a bunch of money into this, and they developed this group to really focus on machine intelligence. And this fellow, Richard Sutton, is considered kind of one of the world, if not the world's genius on artificial intelligence and the natural intelligence that they learn. It's very interesting because people get scared when they hear this machine learning, but all they're doing is finding ways to kind of automate a lot of the boring processes in business. And these guys now are, you know, they're populating Google, they're populating, you know, Facebook, and all these companies are coming to Alberta to hire away our machine learning institute folks. So fascinating stuff going on in there. The development of our breadth of energy supply. You know, we have all of the resources in terms of sunshine, in terms of wind. We have fossil fuels. We have lithium. We could be one of the largest suppliers of lithium. 40% of the lithium supply right now is out of China, and so Alberta has a whole bunch of these streams of lithium, and we need to develop that stuff. We could become the largest supplier of batteries into the electric cars if people want to drive electric cars. So we have all the resources if we just use our ingenuity to be able to drive that. And so this is from Invest Alberta. So what they're telling people outside of Alberta is that we have a very strong corporate tax advantage. I'll talk a bit about that. We have a strong and diverse economy. We've got great environmental leadership. I'll talk briefly about that as well, all in the next 5 minutes, Daria. Business friendly, globally connected, and you know, we've got a great workforce, that people who know how to work and are productive, and of course the quality of life. We have an 8% corporate tax rate, and many go, why is Kenny giving away this money to the rich corporations? They're just going to pocket it and buy airplanes and boats, according to Mr. Trudeau. But why it is that we want to drive the corporate tax rate down is that if you take a look at, this is our this is kind of some projections from a couple of years ago, and it's what was projected out as our economic revenue source for Alberta. Personal income tax 11, corporate income tax 4.8. If we try to take all the money from the corporations, two things will happen. One of them is they will probably become less productive, and secondly, they'll probably leave. I went on a trip down in Nevada with 65 business owners who were looking at leaving Alberta because of the economic situation here. And then the other thing is that if we can get corporations to stay and move here, and they create jobs, and that's what the Irish Celtic Tiger was about. They generated jobs. They happened to bring a company called Pfizer into Ireland, and that worked out pretty well for them when it came time to have some doses. But what between the two, personal and income and corporate income tax, 30% of our government revenues come from there, a significant portion. And we have, so our options are, we can just tax people more. We could just take more of that from people. The second one is we can tax companies more. And the third one would be to get more people working, to try to drive this 11 number higher. And so that's the intention that we've been really driving as a business advocacy group, is we need more people working. So how do we attract businesses that create jobs? How do we get more people working? And then how do we make sure that we have enough immigration so we have enough people to do the jobs? Because we're starting to have a shortage of people right now, particularly in the tech industry. And so the question for the tech companies is, can Alberta supply enough people to be able to do the work? And that's why immigration becomes important. So we have more of those. If we can drive a 10% growth in personal income tax, that's much more valuable to us than driving a 10% increase in the corporate tax rate. So Alberta has got a very business-friendly culture. It's, there's all sorts of innovation grants and concepts going on. That the goal that we've been really pushing is, so let's create jobs, and we got to remove the barriers to job creation, red tape, and some of these things. We've got to build infrastructure. I talked to a contractor last night who was telling me that he's quoted more jobs this year than ever. There's a lot going on in government at the municipal, provincial, and federal level are doing a good job of getting money into infrastructure building so that there's work to be had, and we need to diversify our economy. Alberta does have this highest GDP per capita, so we're very productive. We have, there's about 700 major projects for about $160 billion on the books right now. And there are so many projects going on out there. It's fascinating to see, but we don't talk about them. We talk about all the bad things that are happening. And so that's, again, why I'm trying to get out and talk to more people about this incredible place called Alberta. It's a very secure, stable place. Those are the things that we use to try to attract people. Here's some of the companies that are housed in Alberta somewhere. We have WestJet. Very few places have an international airline in their province, and we have to be really careful we take care of that, because right now they are hurting badly. And the amount of revenue that they generate, plus the activity at the Edmonton International Airport and the Calgary Airport, we have extraordinary things going on. In the US, they actually put a huge stimulus program in place for the airports and the facilities for aviation. Canada hasn't done much other than bought a little piece of Air Canada. Didn't do anything for WestJet. Again, very widely distributed industry. We think we are well diversified and continue to move that direction. And I think I better kind of wind things up here just because we've got to watch our time. But I'm a huge believer in, sorry, this environmental piece is probably important in that we've reduced our greenhouse gas emissions in the fossil fuel industry. Sorry, my screen's jumping around here. 20% lower greenhouse gas emissions since 2011. Nobody else is even trying to do this stuff in the rest of the world. And yet we're trying to turn the taps off on our own stuff. It's nuts. And the rest of the world just kind of laughs at us because we haven't reduced an ounce of greenhouse gas in the world. All we've done is really hamstrung the groups in Alberta. So we have all sorts of opportunity in front of us. You know, there's a recovery site up in Fort McMurray where it looked like this at one time. It looks like this now. Somehow or another, National Geographic doesn't like to show that stuff. They like to show this, the first picture. But Alberta is rocking and rolling right now. There's a lot of good stuff going on. And I wanted to get out and just kind of talk to people about all of the different things. So if you get a chance, go onto the Invest Alberta website, take a look at it. And when I looked at it, I just wanted to send it to all my friends in Alberta and say, do you know all these things? Like what's going on at the Edmonton airport is absolutely extraordinary. So anyway, all that said, I'm a big fan of Alberta. I think that we're in a position right now that we're about to really take off. And you tell me that you can find something more beautiful than some of these gorgeous pictures of our little province. So let me wind it up there, Daria, and pass it back to you. I'd love to hear if there's any questions or comments on how we can continue to drive this province forward, because we have everything we need, and all we really need to do is remember and believe that, as opposed to listen to the noise.
Thank you very much, John.
Not sure where I am on my screen. There we go.
There you go. So I just want to say first, such a great storyteller, John, such an amazing representative of our province. We couldn't have selected somebody better to be our spokesperson, and Paul Harris Fellow and St. Albertan, and incredible. So no more EORs, attract businesses, get more people working, increase immigration. Where do I sign up? I know we've got a million questions from this group, and they're just chomping at the bit. So hands up. Craig.
Yeah, John, I just want to say thanks for your very inspirational presentations. I found it really uplifting, particularly at a time where you see, you know, the COVID numbers being what they are, and, you know, comments that, you know, Alberta is Canada's Florida, and it's really quite depressing. I just want to sort of reiterate what you said. You know, I've had, as we were chatting in the breakout room beforehand, you know, I served in the regular army 21 years. And when you finish your contract, you basically have the option to move wherever you want in the country. It's just sort of one of the bonuses they had or used to have. And for, you know, for Carol and I, it was a simple decision to come back here. You know, we spent a good chunk of our adult lives here. Love the province, love the people, and the opportunity as well. And having lived in places like Ontario, you know, for example, they just don't seem to get it there when you talk about the Alberta advantage and just the resilience, and certainly it's there's a huge reason that we, you know, we chose this out here. So again, that's just us, but thanks very much. Very inspirational chat, and thanks for reaffirming belief in Alberta.
If I can just a quick comment on that. So I have a 23-year-old daughter, 28-year-old son, and I was born and raised here. My parents came over from Europe, and I was born and raised in this place where you could do anything. Any job you wanted, anything you wanted. It was just a land of opportunity. And I want that same province for my kids. And I you know, I'm going to fight pretty hard for anyone who's trying to take it away from us, because the next generation, you know, there's think it's in the Montreal Canadiens dressing room. It says, "From failing hands, we pass the torch for those to hold on high." We owe it to the next generation to give them the province that we were given. And people like Peter Lougheed and many of the people who discovered and developed this incredible resource called bitumen built this province based on it, and we owe it to take it to the next level. What is the next bitumen? It's probably a computer chip, but we'll figure that out.
Thank you, John. Ed, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, good morning. Just a quick question, John. Yeah, I mean, I'm not terribly, well, I'm a bit surprised by your presentation, not negatively, of course. I think it's all great information. I'm certainly aware of the fact that, compared to the 1980s, when I was much younger, a much higher percentage of the economy was driven through the oil and gas sector back in those days. I think it was up towards 30%. But my question, though, is this for you. How are you finding the way forward to get your message out relative to the national messaging, which is, let's be honest, I mean, you watch the news, and I try not to as much as I can. It doesn't, I mean, it's almost like it's intentional, but it completely represents almost everything you can imagine negative about being in Alberta. So how do you guys take that on, knowing it's a bit of an uphill fight, and if you have two choices, fight or die? So glad to hear you're fighting, but yeah, just wondering what your thoughts are on that front.
It's a great question, Ed. And if you take a look at our history back to 1905 when we became a province, and there's some fascinating research in there. As I get older, I see that history as being much more recent. It's funny how that works, but we've been fighting for this since 1905. Like right after we became a province, we were fighting for how do we protect our resources. So there's been 2 or 3 attempts to try to take control of them. I recently was a intervener on the challenge of the Bill C-69 Impact Assessment Act, and we think we'll be going to the Supreme Court on it. So we have a history of central Canada having the dominance in terms of size and seeing us as an outpost. The whole Western, go out there and get the resources and bring them back for the rest of us, and they're doing a pretty good job of that these days. But the first thing you have to do is you have to kind of believe that you have something special here. I actually think that if I was the leader of something, I would look at Preston Manning. Really kind of caught my attention recently, wrote a new book called Do Something. And what he had going was the idea that we have to have a voter base that's as strong as either Ontario's or Quebec's to be able to have fair and equal representation. And so if you go back to the history of the old Northwest, we had Northwest Territories, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta were called the Northwest. And that today would have kind of the same voting clout as the other two. So there's a bunch of work going on in a bunch of different areas. We would have access to water through the Hudson's Bay, and thanks to global warming, that's becoming a more convenient place for access to water. So how do we continue to have to challenge and battle with our friends in Ottawa. They have got I saw something the other day from Catherine McKenna's husband is quite a aggressive. He's got some contentious things to say about our prime minister, and I think that there's more people that are starting to figure out that this whole environmental movement it's an end that we all want. Everybody wants this sustainability, but we have to do it. It's a evolution, not a revolution. Elon Musk said the other day, if somebody gave me a switch to turn off fossil fuel, I would not touch it, because if we did, we wouldn't have hospitals and schools and all these things. So, even Elon Musk, the hero of electric cars, is challenging some of the thinking. So I think we can roll over, or we can try to leave. I don't know where we're going to go and how. I'd rather fight the fight, because I think people before us did it, and I think we have to keep the battle up. But that's just my opinion.
Thank you for that, John. Great question, Ed. Jackie, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I do. Thanks, John. Nice to see you.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it was a really good presentation, and honestly, knowing you the way I do, I knew you were gonna give us a presentation of positivity like this, and we do have so much to be thankful for. I find that in Alberta, and Kenny said this on a morning show yesterday, that everything